Hello, and welcome to another Fibre Channel Industry Association Bright Talk webcast. Today we're going to talk about Fibre Channel Outlook 2021 and beyond. The topic today is a little different than our previous web education series webcasts. It'll probably be a little less technical and down into the nitty-gritty, and a little more about us taking stock of the Fibre Channel industry, where it's come from, where it is today, what are the current trends we're seeing, and how do we look at the future looking forward to us. So it's a little different, and we think it's appropriate time at the end of the year to cover these kind of topics, and it's been a regular question that we get into the industry asking about such things. So today we have a number of really exciting guests and speakers to join us in this discussion. First of all, we have Craig Carlson. Craig is a senior technologist at Marvell and is very active in the technology standards groups. Craig is the T11 vice chair and chair of the T11 FC NVMe 2 working group. And we're very happy that Craig also serves on the FCIA board of directors. Next up, we have Rupin Mohan. Rupin is the Director of R&D and CTO for SAN at HBAs. He leads a global R&D team responsible for development and qualification of storage networking products. Rupin has quite a few, he's been granted 9 patents, filed 35 plus patents, so he's a very accomplished engineer. And Rupin completed his MBA from MIT Sloan School of Management. Also, Rupin is also on the board of the FCIA and serves as the marketing chair for the FCIA. And a very special guest today, we have Casey Quillin. Casey is the principal analyst and founder of Quillin Research. Casey has over 25 years of experience as the executive manager and entrepreneur in the technology sector. Prior to founding Quillin Research, he was research director at Del Oro Group for over 10 years and was responsible for storage area networking, network security, and data center appliance and market research programs. Casey holds a BA in government from California State University, Sacramento. He also earned his MS in finance from Robinson College of Business at Georgia State University and an MBA from St. Mary's College. My name is Mark Jones. I'll be the moderator for today's discussion. My job is I'm the Director of Tech Marketing for Broadcom in the Emulex Connectivity Division. I'm also on the FCIA Board of Directors and currently serve as its president. Okay, a little bit about Fibre Channel and the FCIA in general. The FCIA, the Fibre Channel Industry Association, has been around for over 25 years. In fact, last year we celebrated our 25th anniversary. It's led by and made up of industry-leading member companies. So we're very, very proud of the fact that we have a very wide and diverse group of companies that participate on the board of directors and within our education and marketing and member programs. And then Fibre Channel in general, as you are probably aware, has been around quite a while and has enjoyed tremendous success. There's been over 142 million Fibre Channel ports shipped since we began counting in 2001. And some of the key tenets of Fibre Channel, we like to review this every time just in case we have some new viewers here. Fibre Channel is a purpose-built as a network fabric for storage and standardized in 1994. Fibre Channel is a complete networking solution defining both the physical network infrastructure and the data transport protocols. A couple key points and attributes of Fibre Channel are it's a lossless, congestion-free network, multiple upper layer protocols, so we can accommodate lots of different protocols that can communicate over the wire simultaneously, multiple topologies, multiple speeds, and we'll go over that today in quite a bit of detail about the speed roadmap. Inherently, Fibre Channel is very secure, so lots of folks like to use Fibre Channel because of its air gap network. And also, Fibre Channel is quite resilient and very reliable. Okay, our agenda today is I'm going to cover a little bit about the Fibre Channel industry at an overview and talk about where it's been, where it's going. And then Casey's going to cover the market landscape. So as I mentioned, Casey's a very special guest today, coming from the analyst side. So he'll bring an outside perspective on how the Fibre Channel landscape looks. Craig Carlson's going to cover the Fibre Channel roadmap. And Rupen Mohan's going to cover automation and orchestration, a couple of very key topics and future forward-looking initiatives within the FCIA. If you'd like to, please feel free to download this attachment. In your BrightTalk page, you'll see an area for attachments and links. We have a couple of attachments there. One of those is this presentation, and another is the 2020 Fibre Channel Solutions Guide. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to post your questions in the question box, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. Okay, firstly, I'd like to give a little overview on the Fibre Channel industry, and some of this involves a bit of background. What I'd like to do is cover some of the background, talk about how the FCIA industry works a little bit, and then get into some of the current status of some of the programs and what's working and what's not, and then look at trends for the future. So first of all, this chart here is a chart we often use, and it's been adapted over time. But it really is a really good graphical representation of where Fibre Channel has come from and some of the major milestones. You can see we have this trend where Fibre Channel began, where we started with arbitrated loop and at 1 gig speeds, and we basically doubled the speed every 3-4 years since then. We added fabric services. The trend in networking became, in the compute environments, it became virtualization. Fibre Channel adapted to that with NPIV, and then converged networks with FCOE. And then most recently, NVMe over fabrics has been a big initiative in all the storage industry, and Fibre Channel has adapted to that as well. And we're at a point now where we're in our 7th generation of Fibre Channel. So there's been many generations, and we're very proud of the fact that we've had many loyal customers that have migrated generation to generation as Fibre Channel has matured. And this doesn't come about by accident. So the way it works is we have a standards organization and a marketing organization. Insight's T11 is really the standards organization that defines and determines the standards for Fibre Channel. And then the FCIA, the Fibre Channel Industry Association, could be considered as the marketing organization for the industry. So we both work very closely and collaboratively together, always taking inputs from customers, and that provides the major input into the industry as to what gets developed and what comes out of it. You can see, T11 is very focused on technical innovations and storage innovations, and always looking at what's happening on that side to make sure Fibre Channel stays up with that or stays ahead of that and turns those into Fibre Channel standards, where the FCIA takes requirements from customers, looks at market needs, and really provides that kind of input into T11. And then, of course, the FCIA provide, as I mentioned, is the marketing arm, where we give presentations, provide education, and PR. So that's how it all works. So, as I said, let's take stock of where we are today. We're nearing the end of 2020. Fibre Channel's been around for 25 years. And what is the best way to look at Fibre Channel? I think if you had to sum it up, you'd say Fibre Channel is the most trusted network transport for enterprise storage. That's how we're viewed today. Nearly all data centers, all data center class storage arrays use Fibre Channel. You see it's almost ubiquitous. If somebody really cares about their data, and data is highly important to them in the enterprise, they connect that data with Fibre Channel. So we're very happy and very, very aware that we have the responsibility responsibility to make sure that Fibre Channel always maintains that trust. Fibre Channel is a premium offering. It may not be the cheapest product. There might be cheaper alternatives, but it's one of those things you kind of get what you pay for. You know, there's a lot of in-depth development, lots of organizations testing and qualifying and ensuring that complete supported solutions are in place to make sure Fibre Channel never loses or corrupts data. So it's very important in that regard. Also, the Fibre Channel industry in general has an extremely healthy ecosystem. As I mentioned, T11 is the standards organization, and still today they meet on a bi-monthly basis. Lots of different companies are members of T11. They come in with independent thoughts and engineers to contribute to the Fibre Channel standard. So it's very healthy in that regard. There's always a lot of activity and work taking place in the industry. And of course, the FCIA is still very strong in terms of marketing, providing training, and making sure the industry is well aware of the advances that happen within Fibre Channel. And of course, our customers are also very important. FCIA has a huge installed base, as I mentioned before, with over 142 million ports served. And you have to think that, you know, those customers have stayed with Fibre Channel over multiple generations, updating switches and storage and host adapters over a 25-year period of time and growing their Fibre Channel footprint. So we're very proud of the fact that customers feel that they have this loyalty and they'll be rewarded to them. Of course, it's not by accident. T11 designs Fibre Channel to always be 2 generations backwards compatible, so it makes it very easy for customers to migrate to next generations of Fibre Channel while protecting the investments that they already have. Okay, so you know, a couple of the major topics and advancements within the Fibre Channel industry. I think if you look at it today, NVMe over fabrics has been, you know, a major topic in the industry in the last few years, and there's strong, you know, strong support that began with the T11 beginning in 2014 to map the Fibre Channel interface to NVMe over fabrics. So we've done a lot of things there, including as the technology has progressed, we provided demos, lots of industry plug fests where members could come together to test products to ensure interoperability and reliability. And we've been tracking, you know, first product shipments and performance testing and really keeping track of how NVMe over Fibre Channel has progressed in the industry. And then most recently in 2020, we announced the completion of FC NVMe 2, which brings a more reliable layer to the transport going forward. So in 2020, we can see that Fibre Channel is really the leading transport for NVMe over fabrics. You see lots of complete end-to-end supportable solutions in interoperability matrices across operating systems and from storage devices. So at this point today, we support all major operating systems, and there are significant application performance improvements to be had by using NVMe over Fibre Channel over the traditional method. So what does it hold for the future? Well, the future of NVMe FC continued performance improvements as OSs refine the transport. We'll probably see broader vendor and OS adoption. We have almost complete adoption now, but there's just a couple gaps that we know are going to be filled here in the next year or so. And then really NVMe FC is really it's going to be the springboard for a lot of new technologies coming out of Fibre Channel. So it provides a great base for us to build on. I think the other thing to talk about, we're very, you're going to hear a lot about the roadmap and different levels of Fibre Channel speed adoption by our other guests today. But another thing to be aware of where we're at today at the end of 2020, and especially what's happening in 2021, is that 64 gig is the next speed to come out of Fibre Channel. You may be aware that in 2018, we announced that the standard, the T11 standard for 64 gig was completed. But things happen in kind of a flowing motion at how these different speeds are adopted. And you can kind of view this as a bit of a teeter-totter where you have a weight on one end and a weight on the other end, and you want this thing to be balanced. The same is true with technology, where we have users have a particular need. Do they have the need for faster pipes to transmit data over? And then you have the other end of it, are the storage devices capable of delivering the bandwidth that's required by the users? And then finally in the middle you have the servers. Are the servers capable of transporting and processing that data in between? So we have this chart here that kind of looks at all sides of this, and what I'm going to try to do here is compare it to the transition from 32 gig and when it started to hit the marketplace in 2016 versus today in 2021 with 64 gig. Now from a user perspective and how data was consumed in those days, databases were, there's an increasing adoption of data warehousing. The looking at that data was very intentional. There wasn't a widespread data warehousing query capability at the time, so it was a very deliberate function within organizations and limited. But it really began increasing quite a bit and provided the need for 32 gig at the time. We also had virtualization, so it was popular at that point in time for virtual migration, storage migrations, which would consume a lot of data on the pipes, as well as VDI was fairly new at the time as well. So those were the things that were kind of driving 32 gig adoption back in 2016. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, storage was just entering the all-flash array area, where arrays, even at a modest price, were of extremely high performance and had the capability of writing and sending data at very high speeds, whereas in the past it required lots of spindles to do such things. So both ends of the spectrum, we had customers that needed the data, and we had storage arrays that could send it, and we added pipes that were capable of being able to transmit it. And at the time, the servers were capable of it, and a very good match for 32 gig fiber channel because of the speeds of the PCI bus and the memory capabilities at the time. Fast forward to 2021, and we kind of see a very similar trend on the need for data end of things by end users. One thing we do know is that data has grown tremendously since that time, probably by about 4 times that amount. And data warehousing hasn't slowed down at all. In fact, if anything, data warehousing is even more critical today by as much as double than it was 5 years ago. And then the way data in data warehouses would be queried, it's no longer just intentional by very specialized programs, but instead now there's very wide adoption of business intelligence products almost on every desktop. So it's possible now for almost every user in a very large organization to create queries to a data warehouse to find critical business intelligence information. So the need for that data has really exploded. And there are other things too that are new, artificial intelligence. So, we have queries, creating queries based on artificial intelligence, which is something fascinating. And then of course, there's been a lot of discussion on IT governance, and that only replicates the amount of data that needs to be placed in different regions of the world. On the storage side, the other end of the teeter-totter, we have all flash arrays are even more common now. The back ends are getting much, much faster with NVMe devices. The front ends are going faster with faster controllers and more memory and cache. So these things are going faster all the time. And then it's a very good match for the servers. The servers are going to enter a phase this year where it's going to be commonplace for them to have faster PCI bus configurations, the PCIe Gen 4 servers coming out this year, as well as increase in faster memory within those servers. So all elements are in place. The need is there, and we think this year 64 gig fiber channel is really going to be launched and take off in a real meaningful way. This is an example of a performance test that was created on prototype 64 gig products. What is happening here is this is an illustration that actual data warehousing applications are more than ready to take advantage of the increased speed available from 64 gig fiber channel. This is a data warehousing test. It's something we use a tool called HammerDB. It has a TPCH simulation component to it, and it's made up of 22 query sets of real data going through an Oracle 19C database. And you can see that based on the speed, that 16 gig being at the bottom, achieving 1600 megabytes per second, it takes a long time to complete those 22 queries. 32 gig does it in about half the time, and we can see here proof that 64 gig can do it in yet half the time again. So the applications are ready, and as I mentioned, the need is there. Okay, the other area of need for Fibre Channel, and I think we've been very good about this in the Fibre Channel Industry Association, is that in providing IT with education. It used to be that IT education was very specialized. We can see now that there's a trend toward having more generalists being trained and less specific training happening in the schools and within corporations regarding specific technologies. So we feel that there's a need for increased education in Fibre Channel, and we're providing that through a number of initiatives. Of course, one of those is this Bright Talk channel, where bi-monthly we have a series of experts that come on and talk about Fibre Channel. There's all the different elements of it and really get deep into the technology to help train folks how that works. We also have a YouTube channel where we assemble a lot of our previous training topics into playlists that are very helpful for folks that want to go from basics to experts to very specific topics in a series of presentations. And of course, always go to the fibrechannel.org website, look at our blogs, look at some of our discussions and news to find the latest information there as well. Okay, next I'd like to transition over to Casey. Casey's going to take it from here and talk a little bit about the market landscape. Over to you, Casey.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. This is Casey. So part of the story today revolves around the idea that Fibre Channel is alive and well. So I wanted to share a few data slides that show what the FC SAN market looked like in the last few quarters, where the market is now, and then a little bit about the trends and what we will continue to believe will drive the market going forward. I'm going to try to keep things on a higher level, and I really am talking about the market as opposed to individual vendors. And there's a handful of those in the market, so I don't want to go into too much about them. But if we take a look at the first slide, so this is the market, about 5 years of actual data. This is revenue, and it's the total SAN market. So these are FC switches and adapters. In the most recent quarter, 2Q20, and yeah, we are right up against 3Q20, so some of this is already dated a little bit, but we saw the total market grow about 2% year over year. The revenue growth in the adapters offset some declines in FC switch revenue. And while the revenue in the switches was down a bit, I want to show this picture and call your attention to the area around 2018 and into the beginning of 2019. This revenue was a record for the SAN market. These are the highest levels. So while we're talking about some slight declines now, we're coming off of within about a year some of the highest levels we've ever seen in the market. And it is a mature market, and there was some softening that happened up until that period. I'll go into some of the whys at the end, but I just wanted to give you kind of a picture of what that looked like at first. And then this slide now is a perspective from the port shipments. These are the switches. Now, switches typically sell with arrays, and the adapters sell with the servers. But again, you can see here that the 2018 period going into 2019 was very strong. Port shipments tend to show the demand in the market, while revenue has a number of factors, including price, premiums, and other things. But again, it was down slightly. But I think the interesting point here is that we're starting to see, after that very large period of increase, some movement towards some equilibrium, back to some level of seasonality. And that represents there some, flattish to low single-digit growth. But the other thing to remember is that while it doesn't look like a lot of growth there, we are talking about a baseline that has a lot more ports and revenue in it, given the high levels we saw in 2018. On the adapter side, so adapters look a little more linear. They've been strong for the last several quarters. They've been playing a little bit of catch up with 32 gig switches. The 32 gig has been out there a lot more on the switch side, and what you typically see in a refresh cycle is the first port shipments sold are switch to switch, and data center to data center, and then it fans out from there. And so we started to see in these last few quarters a lot more port shipments on arrays, and then some catch up here again on the server side with the adapters. If we look at the last slide, this is the view with looking at it from speed perspective. So 64 gig has just began shipping at the end of the summer. So it's very early and it's not meaningful ports. But again, I said is what we saw with 32 gig is really some acceleration. And you can see in this slide that where we are in 2Q20, there's quite a lot of it. Now these are port shipments from manufacturers off the dock. So there are some port shipments of 32 gig that sold with 16 gig adapters. Optics, because they tend to be less expensive. And so what we see in these markets is as the price premium specifically on the optics starts to fall, we see the adoption accelerate. And then that's kind of what we've seen in the past. But so what caused that growth? What was the drivers behind it? And some of them were specific to the technology, and some were kind of specific to the timing. In that period, we had the U.S. Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which made significant reductions to the corporate tax rates, and so corporations were flush with money, and they ultimately generated some increased budgets for IT spending. So a lot of boats got floated a little higher because of the tide for everybody. But there's also an accelerated FC switch refresh in the cycle that happened because there was some pent-up demand over a period of time before that, as new storage trends such as increased interest in cloud-based storage, growing demand for IP-based and direct attached storage created some uncertainty. And I think buyers were sort of being wary to see where Fibre Channel was going to go and what they were likely to do with their existing infrastructure, and if they were going to protect that investment and so on. So that refresh started to accelerate. Some organizations also had been putting a lot of workloads into the cloud, and we saw actually an interesting trend where some of those workloads have been kind of clawed back into on-premise. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But typically, you can say security, having your mission-critical data network close to home are kind of the more prevalent ones. Also in that time period, the related markets, servers and storage kind of rebounded. It had been some softness, especially in external storage before that, so that helped a bit. Some of the recent revenue growth can be attributed also to average selling prices, ASPs. So this market does have a limited number of vendors. It's smaller than a lot of other markets, and so there's a bit of a captive audience. And as you see this market get older and be more mature, there's been a longer period of time where ASPs have stayed higher, especially on new equipment. And so that's helped on the revenue side a bit. And then also going forward, and what we expect to see onward is really these flash arrays because you're starting to squeeze a lot more performance IOs and through the array, and you don't want the network to become the bottleneck. And these smart people that are on the call with us today are going to talk a little bit more about those things. But from a market perspective, it makes the compelling case that you want to upgrade based on performance and speeds, which was kind of less so in the past. Mark mentioned that these are air-gapped networks, so they're secure, but that also means that there's not a lot of people downloading iPhone updates on these networks. This is strictly mission-critical data networks. And so speed wasn't as big of an issue in the past as it is now going forward because of those advances. And another one is NVMe, which ties obviously along with flash arrays given how that memory is accessed. And so it's helpful to make sure that we, again, don't create a bottleneck in the network. NVMe over fabric, again, these gentlemen are going to talk a little more about that. But from a market perspective, I get the question quite a bit about what I expect the fabric to be. And I think early on and where we are now and what I expect to see is Fibre Channel being the fabric because it's already what's installed. It's what everybody knows. It's the network choice for storage right now for block-based storage, and that's likely to continue. Later on, I think there'll be different opportunities for Ethernet and other things, but I think the initial push and what you will see as adoption begins to roll out will be on Fibre Channel at first. So these trends I outlined, they're along with the product refresh cycles, are going to continue to provide some growth opportunity for the FC SAN market, but also, again, more now than we've seen in the past is this idea that speeds are important, and I think that is, you can see here that the lighter shade of bluish green is 32 gig or above, and so that includes 64, but that's really, some acceleration there in market penetration based on speeds, and that's likely to continue. No, that's really all I had for that. So I will turn it over to Carl, and he can tell you a little bit more.
Thanks, Casey. So I'm going to look at the Fibre Channel roadmap. So roadmap at a glance. On this chart, we show two different varieties of Fibre Channel. The blue line is native Fibre Channel. So the lower blue line we're showing is the single lane serial speeds. And on this chart, we go all the way back to 8 gig, and we're showing its current finished speed near the middle is 64 GFC, and the speed which is being worked on is in the committee right now, the standards committee right now, is 128 GFC. The top blue line is the quad speed or the 4-lane parallel, and 128 GFC quad was completed 4 or 5 years ago. 256 was completed about a year ago, and then we have additional speeds which will be developed as the market demands. Also on the slide shows the FCOE speeds. That's the green lines, and the lower line is the single lane FCOE serial, single lane serial, and we go back to the 10 gig. And all the way up to the new 100 gig, which is in development. And also the upper green line shows going up to the 400 gig, which is also in development in IEEE. So diving down into the roadmap a little bit, the FCIA routinely updates this roadmap based on new speeds, new technologies. And so this one goes, we have speeds going back to 8 gig Fibre Channel, but if we had more space on the chart, we could go back to 1 gig. That's where this roadmap started. Starting at 64, you'll see a change in the center line, which is the line rate. Before that, we were NRZ, And now we're at PAM4, which is a more efficient coding method, which allows you to get more bandwidth out of your cabling and in the equipment. The most networks today are using PAM4. Ethernet is too. So we go up to, we see on this chart a 64 completion of 2017 for the standard and 128 target completion of 2021. So for ISLs, we have here a mix of Ethernet and native fiber channel. Typically, ISLs, we mark them as parallel speeds. So on this chart, we go back to 10 gig, which is 2003, all the way up to the 400 gig FCOE speed, which is in development on Ethernet right now. And then we also have FCOE speeds. This is single, typically single lane speeds, which is there's also actually this one's a mix of single lane and multi-lane, but the current one that's under development is 100 gig FCOE for single lane, and that corresponds to the 128 GFC. Similar technologies share between the two speeds, and it goes to the 400 gigabit Ethernet, which is in development for a parallel solution in IEEE. And that's all I have for the charts. For a summary, so the goal of our roadmap in our development is to double the speed approximately every 3 to 4 years. We're now working on 128 GFC. We also make sure that the speed increases are always backward compatible with at least the previous two speeds. So there would be auto negotiation from the current speed to two generations before. The goal also is to have 100 meter cabling reach for multimode fiber, and to decrease latency for new generations, and also to add more value-add features. And we're working on automation and orchestration, and that's something that Rupen will be talking about in the next section. So with that, I'll hand it off to Rupen.
Hey, thank you, Craig. Thanks, folks, for taking some precious time out of your calendars to hear us out. I'm going to talk about automation and orchestration. And so if you look at our SAN market here, right? We have really created a really purpose-built fabric for storage, traffic. And what we are also starting to do now is really building some technologies around how can we make it really, really easy for our customers and our admins to deploy this technology. As we mentioned, earlier in this presentation, we see a very distinct move towards generalists in the data centers, admins who can wear multiple hats, who can, go into a highly virtualized, environment and be able to manage compute instances, be able to manage their SAN, being able to manage their storage. So with that, I guess one of the things we've seen is a huge demand for automation and orchestration, and how can we make it easy for our customers to really deploy and manage these products from day zero, day one, and day end perspective. So what we've done as an industry is basically we've looked at this problem and said, how can we solve this problem for a different set of audiences with different set of skill sets, as well as attack this problem at different layers of the stack. So as you can see, at the top, we have Ansible playbooks available for SAN deployment, and we see that for people who are newbies to programming or who don't have any exposure to programming languages, those type of generalists kind of lean towards more of an Ansible solution for automation. where they're looking at, using playbooks to deploy and manage their SAN fabrics. So we have, in the open source, tons of Ansible playbooks, for you to go and manage your SAN. For folks who are more comfortable with Python, and, guess what? If you go into any college today in the United States, you find that the most popular programming language, kids are learning today is Python. Well, I don't want to date myself, but when I went to school, it was C, C++. So as you can see, Python is becoming very popular with the new breed of engineers, coming out of schools. So for these folks, we have Python libraries which they can, readily use and deploy, and, for their automation and orchestration purposes. For folks who are still, I say real programmers, like to use C, C++, we have a bunch of REST APIs. You can use Python libraries to use REST APIs too, but, we have a very robust libraries, REST API libraries, and pretty much all our infrastructure components that you can use to develop your own programming, your own tool set to manage your SAN infrastructure. And, we have that available. But in addition to all that, so before I go into the protocol, I like to also mention that, if you look at industry, we have a ton of tools available from all different vendors, including my company, which are listed on top of the chart. So we have tools, that are already leveraging, all these different libraries and REST APIs that you can, you can use. But one of the things we're doing in the standard bodies is we're saying, what can we do in the protocol? What IP and what, as an industry, what IP can we create as an industry? And, what can we develop in the standard to make it really, really easy for our customers to deploy the infrastructure and autonomously manage the infrastructure? So what we've done is we've developed, technologies around fabric notifications, peer zoning, target-driven peer zoning, just as an example, inside the protocol. And we believe that when we solve a problem in the protocol, the problem gets solved most effectively and most efficiently. So with that, let me move on to the next two slides. I'll talk about some of these development areas that we've developed. So for fabric notifications, I think this year we've done a lot of work around congestion management, where we have developed new FPIN types, which are basically impact notifications in the FS as well as the LS standard, where we can basically, the fabric can itself detect that there is a congestion in the fabric, and it can take steps, and it can basically notify the bully servers to kind of back off and, kind of resolve the congestion in the Fibre Channel network when it, rarely comes through, autonomously. So, that's one area. And then the other area is, in terms of fabric notifications is, when we see degraded paths, we can kind of notify our MPIO engines that, this particular path is a degraded path, and, suggestions to do a failover or to use another different type of load balancing algorithm. So basically, the fabric takes care of the degraded path and makes, appropriate adjustments autonomously. So these are areas of new development, and, very exciting areas for Fibre Channel, and you will see these features, coming out in the products very shortly. The next chart I have is around peer zoning and target-driven peer zoning, and one of the things, again, when the generalist comes and starts to manage a Fibre Channel SAN, one of the big areas of learning curve is the Fibre Channel zoning piece. It becomes very intuitive once you understand how zoning gets done. But, for folks who don't have the time and the energy to learn that process, we have a technology called peer zoning and target-driven peer zoning, where it is possible, and it is already shipping in several products, where customers don't even have to do the zoning. They don't even have to worry about zoning, because while they're doing their storage provisioning, the zoning, the peer zones are automatically created by the infrastructure, and customers don't even have to worry about creating and maintaining fiber channel zones. So this is another area that's in the GS standard we've developed, and a kudos to the industry to get together and develop this standard also that makes fiber channel become, really, really easy to use, for that generalist admin, storage admin, that is becoming more and more prevalent in the industry. So those are two good examples, and we have many, many more. But, I do want to introduce all of you to the 2020 Fibre Channel Solution Guide. It is available for download in this Tech Talk, as well as it is available to download from our website. We just released this solution guide at the Flash Memory Summit last month, and we had a great Flash Memory Summit. We had more than 350 and close to almost 400 people visit our virtual booth at the Flash Memory Summit, so I'm very proud of that. The marketing team did a fantastic job of, creating a tech talk, as well as, setting up the virtual booth, working on the solution guide. I mean, this is a 20 pages, document, which takes a lot of effort to create. And as you can see from the table of contents, we have a very, very dense group of topics that we are discussing here, including, by the way, an article on congestion management, which is self-healing networks. So you can, read a lot of detail on how this actually gets done. We have an article on the roadmap from Craig Carlson and myself. You can read that to get a more detailed view about the future of Fibre Channel. Of course, Mark Jones, who's our president, he's done one fantastic job in writing a great introduction. And then we have other articles, including one from me on, on the roadmap, and as well as we have another article on the autonomous SAN. So please download this guide and enjoy it. And I look forward to engaging with you in other forums and other tech talks. Thank you. So with that, I think, Mark, I'll return this back to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rupin, and thanks actually to all our speakers. Some fantastic content delivered here today. Those in the audience, please feel free to leave your feedback. There's a feedback line in the presentation here. Please leave your feedback for the presentation. It's very helpful for us. It guides us to where we should go next. We also, if you have any questions, I know we have a number of questions already in the chat box for us. I'll go over those in a second. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask those now in the chat. Also, as a reminder, we'll take all the questions and provide a link to those on the web page, the FibreChannel.org web page, for the answers to those questions. So some of the questions we have today are, I'll kind of start from the bottom of the list that I'm viewing here. It says, lossless congestion-free systems, how would you explain slow drain? Is Fibre Channel exposed to slow drain, and should there be some work to alleviate that? I know our panelists, is anybody, maybe Craig, probably a good topic for you.
So slow drain, we are working on a solution to address slow drain. Any network can experience slow drain. Fibre Channel is not any different in this regard, especially if you have devices which may have different speeds connected at the same time. So the new congestion notification mechanisms, which are being defined in T11, is a solution that we're working on for that problem, which allows for notification of a congested network, as well as a method for solving that issue. And so that's something that will be coming out within probably the next 6 months in the standards.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Next question. Is FICON and FC ULP? The
answer to that is yes.
Okay. And here's a good one, maybe for Casey. Any data on FC NVMe ports versus Rocky or iWarp ports shipped to date?
I don't have a lot of data on that. But first let me say, Craig, I apologize. I called you Carl. I think I was going to say Craig Carlson, and I shortened it. So apologies there. But one of the problems with looking at the protocols that are carried over Ethernet is it's hard to understand or to kind of gauge how much is actually running that type of traffic, because you don't have to do a lot of special things from an Ethernet perspective to do that. So we don't know once it's been sold from a manufacturer how much traffic is actually running over it. So I don't have that.
Yeah, I'll second that. I haven't seen any numbers broken out directly in that regard either. I think you can look toward the number of complete solutions that are qualified and supported in the marketplace, perhaps by looking at individual vendor sites for storage devices, or VMware's IOVP guide, to see that Fibre Channel clearly has the most supported solutions out there. Okay, next question. Sorry if I missed it. Do we have NVMe over Fabric speeds to compare to FC 32, 64, etc.? Sounds like kind of a roadmap question.
Well, the answer to that is if you mean NVMe over Fabric over Fibre Channel, then yes, that FC NVMe or NVMe FC can run on any Fibre Channel speed, technically. So yes, 32 and 64 are included in those speeds that NVMe over Fabrics will run on.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question is FPIN features. When will the storage vendors implement this on their arrays?
Well, I can tell you. Go ahead, Rupen.
Yeah, I can probably answer this right. This is a roadmap question. I think all vendors probably are looking at this feature right now and investigating when to put it on the roadmap. So, this will be dependent on, every single vendor has their own priorities and prioritization, so they will prioritize it according to their roadmaps.
Okay, great, thank you. Any timeline in which 64 gig optic modules will be available in the market? I can speak a little bit to that. I don't have a timeline, but I think what we're seeing is we're hearing of products sampling between vendors. So there's some work being done here. So I think we're probably in a stage where we're getting very, very close. As I mentioned, it feels like it's going to become very real, the introduction of 64 gig, and there's already been some announcements from different companies in this regard in 2021. I don't know if anybody else has any other color to add to that. So yeah, I'll just say, the timeline itself is up to companies that have produced those products to make those available. Is FCOE really still being used? I keep hearing that no one is validating server storage designs with FCOE anymore. I don't know if anybody would like to talk to that.
This is Casey. I just will say a couple of things, and then I think Craig might talk a little more about it. So I think he mentioned it. From a market perspective, we don't see a lot of it. It's really been a first hop or server access technology. So the Blade servers, especially from Cisco, the UCS platform, has FCOE running internally. And then it goes up the top of rack switch, and then it breaks off there, one way for Fibre Channel, and another way for Ethernet. But even the small amounts that have been out there are declining. So I don't know from a roadmap perspective if it's a checkbox on new Ethernet speeds, but from an implementation and market perspective, it's a small number getting smaller.
Great. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Casey. What is the roadmap for FC 128?
So what I'm not sure what that means. What is the roadmap? So I guess the question is probably what is the timeline for that? And the timeline is it's in development right now. It's going along with the Ethernet 100 gig serial development, and so basically both are probably going to be finishing within the first quarter or first half of 2021. You know, as you would imagine, any new speed, especially when you start getting faster and faster, you have a lot of technical issues to solve, and so they're still looking at what the best technology and the best methods for pushing that data at that speed is.
Okay, great. And then somebody asked a question about the, I believe this is one of Casey's slides regarding 32 gig. Looks like there's some confusion if it's 32 gig or up to 32 gig or greater than 32 gig.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. No, and it should be greater than or equal to 32 gig. I apologize. But so yeah, he's right. The person or she who asked the question, up until just recently, it's been all 32 gig. Going forward, that includes 32 gig and 64 gig. So yeah, thank you for that. I apologize.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Casey. That's good. And then finally, the last question is this a Broadcom marketing event? And I want to be it's a good question, and I would guess it is a sincere comment from somebody that's listening. Let me just say that no, this is not a Broadcom marketing event. The FCIA and the industry itself is made up of a lot of different vendors. A lot of us are competitors. If you go back and look at previous Bright Talk presentations, you can see that virtually everybody in the industry participates, and of course we work together on the standards and the marketing of this. So I think we're all of pretty similar minds, even though we are competitors. So it's certainly not a position from one company more than another. Okay. So finally, I thank you all for attending. This is a fantastic event. I hope we all had a chance to learn something new and to look forward to the future. Okay, so after this website, a few things we'd like to ask of you. Please rate the event with your feedback. As I mentioned, we'll post a Q&A blog at fibrechannel.org with the answers to the questions we received today. And then please follow us on social media. We have a Twitter account at FCIA News, and for updates of future FCIA webcasts. And then visit our library of on-demand webcasts at fibrechannel.org/webcasts. And we have a huge library of these presentations we've given on Bright Talk. So we really look forward to you going back and looking at those. And most importantly, we look forward to seeing you next time in 2021. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, presenters. Thank you so much.